Dakshina Kali is the most popular form of the Divine Mother Ma Kali. If you've ever walked into a temple or seen her image online, it is usually almost always Dakshina Kali, despite the many different forms of the Divine Mother Ma Kali. Now, why that is, despite her very tantric and fierce origin, we'll get all into that in the top 5 secrets to Dakshina Kali. And first off, we'll start with who am I to talk about the Divine Mother? I am personally initiated into Dakshina Kali Tantra. I have participated in a number of rituals, including the inauguration of a Mahakali Murti. Alongside my guru, how I see it is that I have a responsibility to look at other people and see where they need to go and to find out how best to improve other people's lives and to raise the standards of dharma within society. That's what I'm here to do. And hopefully, with spiritual power, we could use it with such responsibility. With that said, we'll move on to the first secret of Dakshina Kali, which is the textual evidence of Ma Kali. And then from there, where does Dakshina Kali actually come from? Now, Kali as a noun, as a name, is actually first used in the Mundaka Upanishad. Now, in this section of the Mundaka Upanishad is talking about the Agnihotra, the Vedic fire ritual. And what is being described is the fire itself, the fire having 7 tongues, one of which is named Kali. Very interesting. It's not elaborated any further. It kind of just makes 7 names of these 7 tongues and then moves on. Kind of strange. It could indicate the 7 senses, or it could indicate the different details that are apparent in a fire when it is large enough, when someone can look deeply into that Agnihotra fire. But that's about it. I mean, the best that we have is this is the name Kali already associated with tongues, which is very interesting. And that will help us move on into the first appearance of the goddess herself, Ma Kali, which is actually in the Devi Mahatmya, which is embedded in the Markandeya Purana. And this is where the goddess Durga, in here, from her forehead, which was creased by a frown, Kali, terrible faced, and holding a sword and a noose, quickly emerge. Now, this Kali is named Kamunda because she defeats the Asuras Kanda and Munda. Now, in a lesser known mention of the Divine Mother Ma Kali is actually in the Mahabharata War, where Arjun is actually singing and performing hymns to Ma Durga and refers to Ma Durga as Mahakali or Ma Kali. Now getting into specifically Dakshina Kali. You will find her first appearance in the Kola Kundamani Tantra. In the book I'm using, it will be chapter 4, verse 38. And you'll find the same description of Dakshina Kali in the Pettakarani Tantra and in the Karpuradi Stotra. Moving on to number 2. If you read the text that I cited, it's clearly describing something very different than the things that you see in temples or the first Google images that you see. These are more classically known as the Vigraha of Ma Kali, and they look like this. Something that we standardly see all the time. But the dhyanam, that which is being described in these texts, looks something like this. And one is clearly more appropriate for public temples and for more people. It's not the dhyanam for sure. Now, this comes from regional influences in Bengal and the work of Ramakrishna to deliver to more people the blessings of Ma Kali, because given the times, it's very important to do so. That is a part of dharma. Now we'll get more into what the Vigraha actually is by being a bit more general. So many different gods, so many different deities with different images and pictures of what they are and what they're doing. What's the big deal? This makes a lot more sense when you understand that the mantra is literally the deity, and the deity is literally the mantra. Whenever you're doing Hanuman Chalisa, or you're doing Om Namah Shivaya, japa, when you're constantly reciting that mantra, you are invoking the deity, and the image of the deity is literally telling you what the mantra is doing to you, along with the associated stories and the personalities of these deities. That is why it's very important to understand the Puranic stories, to actually look at the Vigraha and the different things that they're holding and the different actions that they're doing, because it all impacts you if you identify and chant these names. Now, I wouldn't be worried about becoming Lord Shiva if you keep chanting Namah Shivaya, right? Even if you do that for 20 years, you wouldn't even come close. But it's more that you'll be tugged into that direction from where you relatively are, hopefully becoming a more balanced person or even a more accelerated person, someone that is clearly on a very specific path. And that is a very detailed guide, and that is not what the dhyanam is. The dhyanam is clearly something that is a part of the sadhana, that's something that you are entering into. When we're describing Dakshina Kali in this way, it is not just a mental image. It's not that. It's not something that you try to learn from like a Vigraha. It is something that you are experiencing and living in. And that is completely different and not for everybody. It's clearly why this tradition, Tantra, requires a guru. This leads us into number 3, the image of Dakshina Kali in the Dhyanam. Let's get into it, starting with the 4 arms of Dakshina Kali, because you might see different things in different hands of Dakshina Kali. You might see a bowl on the lower left hand of Dakshina Kali, and her upper left hand holding the severed head, and then the upper right hand holding the sword. Different variation of Dakshina Kali will stick with the Dhyanam and as the like canonical uh, hand gestures and placements of what Dakshina Kali actually is. In the upper and lower left hands, she holds a freshly severed head and a sword. In her upper and lower right hands, she grants fearlessness and boons. The lower right hand is called Varada Mudra, and this is the boon giving mudra. It looks like this. And the upper right hand being the Abhaya mudra, which is like this. This is the mudra for fearlessness. And these are expected to be cultivated within the practitioner very steadily. If you notice the code being that it is on their right side, the right side of Dakshina Kali. Right handed stuff is more clean, it's more sattvic in nature. It can be delivered in something that is more pleasant, in something that is more conventional in nature. The boons can be conventional, can be the offering of different things, can be the blessings of material goods, or even towards different spiritual heights. All of these are possible with Dakshina Kali. All of it is. And fearlessness. Clearly, you need to be a bit fearless to be in this path at all, even if you're kind of uh, a spectator of the path, when you're kind of there in the temple of Kali and you're seeing it and you're meditating upon it. It does carry that fearlessness, and all those right-handed gestures carry to the people almost always. Now her left side. People that say this is just a metaphor for the destruction of ego, it's just a simple metaphor. That's all it is. Uh, these people are not giving the obvious enough credit. There are other ways to show the dissolution of ego. A cracked mirror is a pretty good one. Or like a skull, like, oh, a dry skull. That's pretty good. I mean, it's there. It's kind of already in the iconography. But no, swiftly severed head. It says swiftly, implying that that sword is sharp, and it took no time to rip that off the body. This swiftly implied violence is an indication for how difficult this path actually is. It's not like instantaneous, like actually getting your head chopped off like a guillotine, the same way how a mantra chanting Namah Shivaya over and over again doesn't instantly make you Lord Shiva. It doesn't do that, but it's showing you that it is quicker than other mantras at doing what it needs to do. And that is where the first indication of a need for a guru, for someone else to come in and look at you and see if your adhara is fit for this type of sadhana, avoiding the personal bias of, oh, I can handle it, oh, I could do this, oh, I could do that. Now let's proceed to the rest of the dhyanam. In this translation, one should meditate on the divine Dakshina Kali as terrible faced, fearsome, and loose unbound hair and forearms adorned with a garland of severed heads. On her upper and lower hands, she holds a freshly severed head and sword. In her upper and lower right hands, she grants fearlessness and boons. She is dark like a great rain cloud and sky clad, smeared with the dripping blood from the row of heads hanging at her neck. She is made terrifying by the pair of corpses worn as ear ornaments. She has dreadful fangs, a grim mouth, a full uplifted breasts. She wears a girdle made of corpse hands, smiles, and her face quivers with the streams of blood flowing from the corners of her mouth. She utters dreadful cries, is supremely fierce, and dwells in the cremation ground, endowed with three eyes like discs of the rising sun. Her fangs show. A great mass of loosened hair hangs down on her right side. She stands upon the chest of Mahadeva in corpse form, surrounded in the four directions by howling she jackals, together with Mahakala or Bhairava in reverse erotic union. Yet her face is serene and pleasant, her lotus countenance softly smiling. Thus should one meditate on Kali, the giver of the fulfillment of all desires. Something interesting to know, not black, not like dark blue, but like a great rain cloud. Interesting. She is in reverse union with Mahakal. This is a erotic sexual position. She is she is on him. I imagine reverse union is just she's the dominant one in this position. And the intense description, all that's being described. What is the end of this dhyanam? Pleasant faced, smiling softly, as if something should be transcended past the immediate visage, which is described first paradoxically as terrible faced. It's very interesting how all that is. And one should contemplate on this and find that meaning within themselves if they're properly initiated in this path. Moving on to number 4. What about the image that is shown in temples? What about the image that we see a lot online? What about that image? The right foot on Lord Shiva, the tongue sticking out, the surprise, the realization, that story. Now, the story that's constantly told is that Durga fighting Raktabija, who is a asura who every time you cut him, the blood will trickle down and it will create more of him. Like he will just spread like a disease, pretty much. He is the idea of an evil that cannot be contained, that something has to actually be ate whole in order for it to be stopped. And this is where Kali comes from, sprouts from Ma Durga, and Kali takes her tongue and completely swallows Raktabija, drinking the blood of the Asura. And this causes a rampage. She is intoxicated by the blood of the Asura, starts dancing, and becomes a threat to the entire universe. Now, Lord Shiva sees this, is like, I gotta do something, and is not gonna go up to her and say, hey, stop that. No, he's gonna die too. She is a literal threat to the entire universe. She is the most dangerous thing out of all the gods, out of all the things in the universe. This is Kali. This is time. This is time ending now. Shiva plays dead. Shiva plays dead on the floor, and while she's on her rampage, she's marching around, steps on Lord Shiva with her right foot. This is what makes her Dakshina Kali. The left foot is something else, is a different form of Kali. Steps on Lord Shiva and realizes, sticks out the tongue. The tongue is a cultural thing. It comes from Bengal, I believe, and is a symbol of maybe embarrassment or some type of realization. And she does this tongue sticking out thing and realizes and stops her rampage, steps on her husband in kind of an embarrassment. Where does that come from? If you read the original text, where she's fighting the Asura Rakta Bij, she swallows him with the tongue, and that's it. She gets intoxicated with the blood. It mentions intoxication, but the chapter ends right after that. Kali doesn't become a threat and is uncontrolled and all this other stuff. That comes later. A lot of tantric commentaries, a lot of philosophical thought came in later, created this idea that Kali is this identity of energy, and Shiva is this identity of consciousness, and consciousness and energy, when they're both combined in equanimity, then you have all of creation. But when energy is rampant, when there is no consciousness, there are problems. That is a philosophical later interpretation of this story. But the story is kind of straightforward. Kali comes in, cleans up shop, and then dances and rejoices, and everyone's happy at the end. But that doesn't take away from the philosophical understanding of what Dakshina Kali is when you see her at the temple, when you see her around everywhere else. If you go to other stories, I mean, you just won't find, like, I tried to look for other sources where they say, hey, where does Kali going on a rampage come from? I mean, you will see that she does defeat an Asura, and to calm her down, Lord Shiva becomes an infant or a baby, and that's what calms her down. But that's a different Asura, that's a different story altogether. So the only thing that we can really come to is that this was a later interpretation, a later commentary. Still important, right? Consciousness and energy needs to be in balance. Just like a light bulb. A light bulb with no resistance burns out. Resistance in this case is the Rudra, is Lord Shiva. And when resistance and current is equaled out to something that is more proper and functional, a light bulb can functionally light properly and steadily. And that is the overall philosophical implication of the Kali that we see for the majority, for the masses. Now, moving on to number 5. So, I don't have to mention this again, but I will. These things require initiation. There's no Tantra without initiation, obviously. What you do is none of my business, but that's just what the texts say. You want to test out the texts? Go ahead, knock yourself out. What is the mantra for Dakshina Kali? Where does that come from? You can easily Google what the Dakshina Kali mantra is, and then Google Gemini will pull it up very easily, and then it'll give you a little note disclaimer. You need a proper guru and all this other stuff. But we're here for, where does it come from in the text? Where can I find the original breakdown of where this mantra came from? It's from the Karpurari Stotram. Full description of Dakshina Kali, beautiful description, goes into every single verse is essential. The mantra itself is very codified, but then commentaries then break it down, and then you can follow it from there. And the Karpurari Stotram just has the original mantra of Dakshina Kali, the shortest, or like a short mantra that is performed with japa for Dakshina Kali, for the people that are initiated in Dakshina Kali. And that is where you're going to find it. That's where it is. We'll not go through it. I'm not going to pull it up and we're going to go through each verse. If you want to do that, that's up to you. Obviously, bija mantras are very sacred. Yeah, those are the top 5 secrets to Dakshina Kali. The utmost respect for the Divine Mother, the utmost respect towards um, all of her and her creation. And with that, this is the Hindu Conceptualist signing out.